Nobody expected the handcuffs. Not at 35,000 feet. When 17-year-old Sasha Sterling was dragged out of seat 1A, the entire first-class cabin went silent. They saw a girl in a faded hoodie and assumed she was a stowaway. The chief purser, a woman named Brenda, who prided herself on keeping the riffraff out, made a fatal calculation. She didn't check the passenger manifest. She didn't check the last name. And she certainly didn't know who was waiting on the tarmac in Los Angeles. When those cabin doors opened, the crew didn't just meet an angry parent. They met the man who could buy and sell their careers in a single afternoon. This is a story of arrogance, prejudice, and the most satisfying, bone-chilling karma you will ever witness. The rain was hammering against the glass walls of JFK Terminal 4, matching the mood inside the cabin of Flight 882, bound for Los Angeles. It was a red-eye, the kind of flight filled with exhausted business executives and C-list celebrities trying to hide behind oversized sunglasses. Sasha Sterling adjusted her backpack. It was an old, beaten-up canvas thing, covered in iron-on patches from national parks Yellowstone, Zion, Acadia. She wore oversized gray sweatpants and a hoodie that had seen better days. To the casual observer, she looked like a tired teenager who had perhaps wandered away from a school trip. She definitely didn't look like she belonged in the queue for Group 1. She held her boarding pass loosely in her hand, her thumb covering the seat assignment 1A. "Excuse me, miss." A sharp voice cut through the ambient noise of the jet bridge. "Group 4 is boarding in 10 minutes. Please step aside." Sasha looked up. Standing at the entrance to the aircraft door was Brenda. Brenda was the chief purser, a woman who wore her uniform not like clothing, but like armor. Her lipstick was a shade of red that felt aggressive, and her name tag gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. She had the eyes of a hawk looking for a field mouse. "I'm in Group 1, Sasha said softly. Her voice was calm, almost bored. She was used to this. Brenda let out a short, dismissive scoff, barely audible, but loud enough to sting. She snatched the phone from Sasha's hand, her eyes scanning the screen with the intent to find a flaw, a fake, or a mistake. She stared at it for a long, uncomfortable moment. The scanner beeped green. Valid. Brenda's jaw tightened. She didn't hand the phone back. She thrust it at Sasha. "Right. Move along. Don't block the aisle." There was no "welcome aboard." No smile. Just the icy resentment of a gatekeeper who felt her gate had been breached. Sasha walked down the jet bridge, head down, headphones already over her ears. She knew the drill. Don't make eye contact. Don't give them a reason. She entered the first-class cabin, a sanctuary of soft leather and warm lighting. She found seat 1A, a window seat with ample legroom, and tossed her canvas bag into the overhead bin. As she settled in, taking out a sketchbook and a charcoal pencil, she felt eyes on her. Across the aisle in 1B sat a man in a bespoke suit, typing furiously on a tablet. He glanced at her, then at her hoodie, then checked his watch, clearly annoyed that his exclusive space was being shared with a teenager who dressed like she was going to a gym class. But the real trouble was in the galley. Brenda was whispering to a junior flight attendant, a nervous young man named Timothy. She was gesturing toward 1A, her movements sharp and agitated. "I don't care what the scanner said," Brenda hissed, her voice carrying just enough for the front row to hear the tone, if not the words. "Systems glitch. Happens all the time with these upgrade standbys. She's probably a non-rev some pilot's niece, trying to act fancy. Keep an eye on her. If she so much as asks for a second bag of nuts, I want to know." Timothy looked uncomfortable. "Brenda, the manifest says full fare. It lists her as a VIP. VIP. Brenda laughed, a dry, brittle sound. Look at her Timothy. She's drawing cartoons. Real VIPs are drinking scotch or sleeping. She's a glitch. And I don't like glitches on my flight. Sasha didn't hear this. She was listening to a lo-fi hip-hop playlist, sketching the curve of the wing outside the window. She was peaceful. She was going home to see her dad for his birthday. She hadn't seen him in 3 months because she'd been at an art intensive in New York. She just wanted to sleep. But peace was the one thing Brenda wasn't going to serve in first class tonight. The flight pushed back. The safety demonstration played. The engines roared to life. As the plane climbed to cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign pinged off. Sasha reclined her seat, pulling a blanket up to her chin. She closed her eyes. 10 minutes later, she was shaken awake. It wasn't a gentle tap. It was a firm grip on her shoulder. Sasha jolted her charcoal pencil rolling onto the floor. Brenda was standing over her. "Ticket," she demanded. Sasha blinked, groggy. "What? I need to see your ticket. Physical copy, now." I used the app," Sasha stammered, reaching for her phone. "It's on my phone." "Phones can be manipulated," Brenda said, her voice loud. The man in 1B stopped typing and looked over. The woman in 2A lowered her magazine. The audience was set. "I need to verify you're actually supposed to be in this seat. We have a discrepancy in the count." That was a lie. Timothy, standing in the galley, checked the count again. There was no discrepancy. 12 seats, 12 passengers. But he was too afraid of Brenda to speak up. Sasha unlocked her phone, her hands trembling slightly. She wasn't scared, but she was embarrassed. She hated being the center of attention. She pulled up the boarding pass. Brenda didn't even look at the screen. She looked at Sasha's bag in the overhead bin. "And that bag. It's too large for the bin. You need to gate check it." "It fit fine," Sasha said, her voice hardening slightly. "It's standard carry-on size." "It is pressing against the emergency equipment," Brenda lied smoothly. "It's a safety hazard. I need you to get up, take the bag, and I'm going to have it moved to the hold. And while you're up, I'm going to need you to move to your assigned seat." "This is my assigned seat," Sasha said, finally looking Brenda in the eye. "Don't take that tone with me, young lady," Brenda snapped. "I have been flying for 20 years. I know when someone is trying to pull a fast one. You bought a basic economy ticket and snuck up here when the gate agents were busy. Now move, or I will have the pilot turn this plane around." The man in 1B sighed loudly. "Look, just move, kid. Some of us have work to do." Sasha looked around. No allies. Just judgment. She felt that familiar heat rising in her chest, the mix of shame and righteous anger. She knew who her father was. She knew she could end this with one name drop. "Do you know who I am?" But her father had raised her better than that. Values over vanity. Darius always said, "Let them show you who they are before you show them who you are." "I'm not moving," Sasha said clearly. "I paid for this seat. I have the proof. If you want to move me, you can call the police when we land." Brenda's eyes went wide. It was the defiance she had been waiting for. The excuse. "Have it your way," Brenda whispered. She turned to the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disturbance. We have a security situation." The security situation escalated with terrifying speed. Brenda didn't go to the cockpit to de-escalate. She went to grab the restraints. In the post-9/11 world, flight crews are trained to handle threats. But the definition of a threat is subjective, and in Brenda's mind, a black teenager in a hoodie refusing to obey a direct order in first class was a threat to the order of the aircraft. She returned with zip-tie handcuffs. "Stand up," Brenda ordered. She had flagged down a male flight attendant from coach, a burly guy named Greg, who didn't know the context, only that the chief purser needed muscle. "She's refusing crew instructions and acting belligerent," Brenda told Greg. "She might be intoxicated. We need to restrain her for the safety of the flight." Sasha stayed seated, pressing her back into the leather. "I haven't done anything, I'm just sitting here." "Grab her," Brenda commanded. Greg hesitated for a fraction of a second, seeing only a terrified girl. But the hierarchy of the air pushed him forward. He reached out and grabbed Sasha's wrist. "Don't touch me," Sasha screamed, pulling back. "Resisting," Brenda shouted, playing to the audience. "She's resisting. Restrain her." It was a scuffle that shouldn't have happened. Sasha, an athlete, twisted away instinctively, but the confined space worked against her. Greg pinned her arms against the armrest. The zip ties bit into her wrists, tight, too tight. They didn't just handcuff her. They humiliated her. Brenda made a show of it. She pulled Sasha out of the seat, forcing her to walk down the aisle toward the galley, her hands bound behind her back. "We're moving you to the jump seat where we can keep an eye on you," Brenda announced. As Sasha was marched past row 2, row 3, row 4, she saw the faces of the other passengers. Some were filming with their phones. Others looked away ashamed. But nobody stood up. Nobody said, "Stop, she's a child." They shoved her onto the small, uncomfortable jump seat near the galley curtain. Brenda tightened the seatbelt across Sasha's chest, effectively pinning her to the wall. "Now," Brenda said, looming over her hands on hips, "you sit there and you think about federal charges. Interfering with a flight crew is a felony. You'll be lucky if you don't spend tonight in a cell." Sasha didn't cry. She refused to give Brenda that satisfaction. She stared straight ahead at the metal latch of the galley cart. Her wrists burned. Her shoulder ached from the way Greg had twisted it, but her mind was racing clear and cold. She waited until Brenda turned her back to prepare drinks for the real passengers. "I need to make a call," Sasha said. "No phones," Brenda said without turning around. "It's my right to notify my family if I'm being detained," Sasha said. "Or is this a kidnapping?" Brenda froze. The word kidnapping hung in the air. She turned around slowly. "You are not detained. You are being managed." "I'm a minor," Sasha lied. She was 17, which was technically a minor, though she would be 18 in a week. "You have handcuffed an unaccompanied minor. You have physical contact with a minor without a guardian present. Do you know the liability involved in that?" Brenda wavered. She was a bully, and like all bullies, she feared consequences. But she had gone too far to back down now. "You can make one call," Brenda sneered. "On the cabin phone. I want to hear every word, and if you lie to whoever you're calling, I'll hang it up." Brenda unclipped the handset from the wall and held it to Sasha's ear, not uncuffing her. Sasha didn't call her mom. She didn't call a lawyer. She dialed a number she knew by heart. It was a direct line, not a cell phone, but a satellite desk line. It rang once. "Sterling Operations, this is Harrison," a crisp British voice answered. "Harrison, it's Sasha," she said. Her voice didn't waver. There was a pause on the line. The tone instantly shifted from professional to alert. "Miss Sasha, you're supposed to be in the air. Is everything all right?" "I'm on the flight," Sasha said, staring directly into Brenda's eyes. "I have been handcuffed by the flight crew. I have been removed from my seat. I am currently restrained in the forward galley jump seat. The chief purser's name is Brenda. I need you to patch me through to Dad." Brenda's face went pale. Sterling Operations. Miss Sasha, Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave. Your father is currently in a board meeting in Tokyo. He's closing the Magellan deal. Interrupt him, Sasha said. Brenda tried to pull the phone away. Okay, that's enough drama. Harrison, code, red, 7. Sasha said quickly, before the phone was yanked away. Brenda slammed the handset back into the cradle. Nice try. Fake codes. Fake daddy. You really are a piece of work. But Brenda's hands were shaking. She had heard the voice on the other end. It hadn't sounded like a fake. It sounded like a butler. Or a chief of staff. Sasha leaned her head back against the wall and closed her eyes. She knew what Code Red 7 meant. It was a security protocol Darius Sterling had set up years ago. It meant family in immediate physical danger. Drop everything. Sasha whispered, mostly to herself. You really shouldn't have done this, Brenda. Shut up, Brenda snapped, but she was pacing now. She checked her watch. 4 hours to Los Angeles. Brenda went into the cockpit. Captain Miller, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The disruption in 1A. She's restrained. But she made a call, spouted some nonsense codes. Captain Miller, a veteran pilot who just wanted a smooth retirement, frowned. Codes? What kind of codes? Red 7. Something like that. The captain's blood ran cold. He wasn't just a commercial pilot. He was ex-military. He knew that specific private security firms used color codes for high-net-worth individuals. And he knew who owned the airline's logistics contracts. Did you check the manifest? Miller asked slowly. The full manifest, the one with the VIP annotations. I looked at the name, Brenda stammered. Sterling. Just Sterling. Captain Miller engaged the autopilot and turned around in his seat. He looked at Brenda with the expression of a man watching a car crash in slow motion. Brenda, he said quietly, our airline was bought out last month by a holding company. Do you know the name of the parent company? Stratum Global, Brenda said. So, and do you know who the CEO of Stratum Global is? Brenda shook her head. She never read the business news. His name, Miller said, reaching for the flight sat phone, is Darius Sterling. And if that girl back there is his daughter, you haven't just lost your job. You've probably cost this airline its existence. Miller dialed the ground tower. This is Flight 882. I need the passenger details for Seat 1A. Yes, full background, now. There was a crackle of static, and then the ground control voice came back, sounding breathless. Flight 882, be advised. We just got a call from Stratum Global Security. They are demanding to know why a hostage protocol has been triggered on your aircraft. They have 3 SUVs en route to LAX tarmac. They want a status report on Sasha Sterling immediately. Brenda felt her knees give way. She grabbed the cockpit doorframe to stop from falling. Unlock her, Miller barked. Unlock her right now, apologize, and pray to God she doesn't sue us into the Stone Age. Brenda stumbled back out into the galley. She looked at the girl in the hoodie, the girl who was currently handcuffed to a jump seat like a criminal. Sasha opened her eyes. She saw the terror in Brenda's face. Is Dad on his way? Sasha asked politely. Brenda couldn't speak. She fumbled for the small key to the zip ties in her pocket. Her fingers were so slippery with sweat, she dropped it. I made a mistake, Brenda whispered. No, Sasha said, her voice like steel. You made a choice. And now you're going to live with it. The remaining 3 hours and 40 minutes of Flight 882 were a masterclass in psychological torture, not for Sasha, but for Brenda. Once the zip ties were cut, Sasha didn't rub her wrists. She didn't scream. She didn't return to seat 1A immediately. She stood up, looked at the red welts on her skin, and then looked at Brenda with a gaze so flat and unreadable it was terrifying. "I'm going to the bathroom," Sasha said. It wasn't a request. She walked past Brenda, bumping her shoulder intentionally. Brenda flinched. When Sasha returned, the atmosphere in first class had shifted entirely. The businessman in 1B, who had previously told her to just move, was now peering over his tablet with wide, nervous eyes. The woman in 2A was pretending to sleep, but her eyelids were fluttering. They had all heard the captain's frantic voice through the galley curtain. They knew something had gone wrong. Brenda tried to do damage control. She approached Sasha's seat with a silver tray, holding a steaming hot towel, a box of Godiva chocolates, and a glass of sparkling water with a slice of lemon. "Ms. Sterling," Brenda's voice wavered, cracking slightly on the name. I brought you some refreshments, and I have some ice for your wrists if you'd like." Sasha didn't look up from her sketchbook. She was drawing a portrait now. It was a rough charcoal sketch, but the likeness was undeniable. It was Brenda. But in the drawing, Brenda looked gargoyle-esque, her mouth twisted in a snarl, chains around her neck. "I don't want your chocolates, Brenda," Sasha said softly. "I want you to stay away from me." "Please," Brenda whispered, leaning in so the other passengers wouldn't hear the desperation. "I was following protocol. You have to understand. The manifest, it was a mistake. I have a family to support. If you just tell them it was a misunderstanding." Sasha finally looked up. "You didn't check the manifest because of a mistake. You didn't check it because you looked at my hoodie and my skin and decided I didn't belong. You didn't handcuff me for safety. You did it for sport." Sasha put her headphones back on. The conversation was over. Brenda retreated to the galley, where she found Greg, the flight attendant, who had physically restrained Sasha. He was pale, pacing back and forth in the small space. "What did the captain say?" Greg asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "He said, Stratum Global is involved." Brenda said, her voice hollow. Greg looked like he was going to be sick. Stratum. The defense contractors. The logistics giants, Brenda. They have a private security force that rivals the Secret Service. My cousin used to work for their cyber division. He said they can erase a person's credit history in 10 minutes. "Shut up, Greg," Brenda snapped, though her hands were trembling as she arranged napkins. "We followed procedure. We'll file a report. It's her word against ours." "No," Greg hissed, pointing to the cabin. "It's her word, plus the 30 people watching, plus the captain, who is currently radioing the tower to save his own skin. We are done." The descent into Los Angeles began. Usually the captain would come over the PA system, announce the weather, 72 degrees, and sunny, and thank everyone for flying. This time, there was silence. The plane banked sharply. Passengers looked out the windows. Instead of lining up for the usual approach to the main terminals, the plane seemed to be heading toward the far south side of the airport, the cargo and private hangars. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Miller's voice came over the intercom. It sounded strained. "Air traffic control has redirected us to a remote stand for a security check. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Do not stand up until we come to a complete stop." A murmur of confusion rippled through the plane. "What does that mean?" the woman in 2A asked loudly. "I have a connection to catch." Sasha looked out the window. She saw the tarmac rushing up to meet them, and then she saw the reception committee. It wasn't a standard gate agent with glowing batons. 4 matte black Cadillac Escalades were parked in a phalanx formation on the tarmac. Flanking them were 2 airport police cruisers, lights flashing silently. Standing by the vehicles were 6 men in dark suits. They weren't airport security. They were large, immobile, and wearing earpieces. The plane touched down with a jolt. Reverse thrusters roared. As the aircraft taxied off the main runway and toward the private hangar area, the sense of dread in the cabin became suffocating. Brenda stood by the exit door, smoothing her skirt, checking her teeth in the reflection of the metal coffee pot. She was trying to compose the face of innocence. The plane came to a halt. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged off, but nobody moved. The captain opened the cockpit door and stepped out. He didn't look at Brenda. He looked straight at 1A. "Ms. Sterling." Captain Miller said, his voice respectful and loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. "Please accept my sincerest apologies for the deviation. Your father's team has requested direct tarmac access. We are opening the forward door for them now." Brenda's stomach dropped through the floor. "They aren't waiting for us to get off. They are coming on." A mobile staircase was driven up to the plane's door. There was a heavy thud as it connected. Brenda took a deep breath, put on her plastic smile, and disarmed the door. She pushed the lever up and swung the heavy door open, preparing to say, "Welcome to Los Angeles." She never got the words out. The first person to step onto the plane wasn't Darius Sterling. It was a man Brenda didn't recognize, a tall, wiry man with salt and pepper hair, wearing a suit that cost more than Brenda made in a year. This was Harrison, the chief of staff. Harrison stepped into the galley, his eyes scanning the space like a Terminator. He spotted Brenda, noted her name tag, and dismissed her existence entirely. He turned to the cabin. "Secure the perimeter," Harrison said into his lapel mic. Two large men squeezed past him. They didn't look like police. They looked like paramilitaries. They stood on either side of the galley, blocking the aisle to the cockpit and the main cabin. The passengers in first class were now terrified. The man in 1B closed his laptop slowly. Then Darius Sterling entered. He was a man who sucked the oxygen out of a room. He was 6'3" black, with shoulders that filled the doorway. He wore a navy blue Tom Ford suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. He didn't look angry in the way a normal person looks. Angry, red-faced, and shouting. He looked like a storm front, cold, dark, and inevitable. He walked onto the plane with a terrifying calmness. Brenda, operating on autopilot panic, tried to step forward. "Sir, you can't just board a commercial." Darius didn't even look at her. He walked straight past her, as if she were a ghost. He went directly to seat 1A. Sasha was still sitting there, clutching her backpack straps. When she saw her dad, the stoic mask she had held for 4 hours finally cracked. Her lip trembled. "Hey, kiddo," Darius said, his voice instantly softening into a deep, warm rumble. He knelt on one knee in the aisle so he was eye level with her. "Hi, Dad," Sasha whispered. "Harrison told me we had a code red 7, Darius said, his eyes scanning her face looking for bruises. "Are you hurt?" Sasha nodded slowly. She held out her wrists. Darius looked down. The skin was raw red and swollen where the zip ties had dug in. There were distinct pinch marks where the plastic had cut into the dermis. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. Darius stared at the marks for a long time. He touched them gently with his thumb, his jaw muscles jumping. Then he stood up. When he turned around, the warmth was gone. The father was gone. The CEO was back, and he was out for blood. He walked back to the galley. The cabin was silent. You could hear a pin drop. He stopped in front of Brenda. She was backed against the coffee makers, clutching her manifest. "Are you the purser?" Darius asked. His voice was low, smooth, and deadly. Yes, sir. I'm Brenda. I didn't ask for your name, Darius interrupted. I asked for your title, because I want to know exactly who is responsible for the safety of this cabin. I am, Brenda squeaked. And is it standard protocol on this airline to handcuff a teenage girl who is sitting in her assigned seat? She was non-compliant, Brenda stammered, falling back on her rehearsed lies. She refused to show a ticket. She was belligerent. We have to prioritize the safety of the other passengers. Darius turned his head slowly to the man in seat 1B. Sir, Darius said. The businessman jumped. Me? Yes, you. You've been sitting across from my daughter for 5 hours. Was she belligerent? The businessman looked at Darius, then at the 2 security guards, then at Brenda. He knew how the world worked. He knew who the shark in the room was. No, the businessman said clearly. She was asleep. Then she was sketching. The flight attendant. She was very aggressive. She dragged the girl out of her seat. Darius turned to the woman in 2A. Ma'am, did my daughter threaten anyone? No, the woman said, shaking her head vigorously. She was quiet. I thought it was strange they handcuffed her. It seemed excessive. Darius turned back to Brenda. His eyes were like lasers. Lying to a federal investigator is a crime, Darius said. But lying to me, that's a mistake. I thought she was a stowaway. Brenda cried out, tears finally spilling over. She was wearing a hoodie. She didn't look like she belonged here. I was just doing my job. She didn't look like she belonged, Darius repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. So you profiled her. You saw a black child in first class and decided she was a criminal. No, it wasn't race. It was Harrison. Darius said, not looking away from Brenda. Sir. Harrison stepped forward with a tablet. Buy it, Darius said. Brenda blinked. Buy what? Harrison. What is the market cap of this airline's holding group? Darius asked. It's a subsidiary of a regional carrier, sir, Harrison said, tapping on the screen. Mid-cap. Struggling. They've been looking for a liquidity injection for 6 months. Stock is trading at 14s a share. Buy a controlling interest, Darius said calmly. Do it now. Contact the broker. I want a board seat by morning. Captain Miller, who had been listening from the cockpit doorway, stepped forward, his face grey. Mr. Sterling, please. There is no need for... Captain, Darius cut him off. You allowed this to happen on your ship. You are just as complicit. Sir, I have the trade execution pending, Harrison said. We are moving the funds from the acquisition trust. We will own 51% of the voting stock within the hour. Darius looked at Brenda. A cruel, satisfied smile touched his lips. Brenda, Darius said, as of about 5 minutes from now, I am technically your boss. And as your boss, I have some questions about your employment history. Brenda was hyperventilating. You can't just buy an airline to fire me. I can, Darius said, and I will. But I'm not just going to fire you. I'm going to make sure that every airline, every train line, every bus company in the civilized world knows exactly what you did today. You won't be able to get a job guarding a mall kiosk when I'm done with you. Darius turned back to the cabin. Sasha, let's go. Sasha stood up. She grabbed her backpack. She walked down the aisle head high. As she passed Brenda, she paused. I told you, Sasha whispered. Calmer. Sasha walked out the door and onto the stairs. Darius followed her, stopping one last time to look at Greg, the male attendant. You touched her, Darius said to Greg. Greg trembled. I was ordered to. You're a man, Darius said with disgust. You should have known better than to manhandle a child. You'll be hearing from my legal team regarding the assault charges. Darius walked out. As they descended the stairs to the waiting SUVs, the passengers inside the plane remained frozen. Did he just buy the airline? The businessman in 1B whispered. Harrison, who was the last one to leave, turned back to the crew one last time. He handed a business card to Captain Miller. This is the contact for Stratum Legal, Harrison said crisply. Don't bother scrubbing the flight voice recorder. We've already subpoenaed the data link. Have a pleasant evening. Harrison closed the aircraft door from the outside. Inside the cabin, the silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of Brenda sobbing into her hands. But the nightmare wasn't over. The story was just beginning. Because while Darius Sterling had the money to crush them, he wasn't interested in just a financial victory. He wanted the truth. He wanted to know why Brenda had been so venomous. And the investigation that followed would reveal secrets that Brenda had been hiding for a decade, secrets that went far beyond one bad day on a plane. The VIP lounge at the private hangar didn't look like an airport. It looked like a high-end medical clinic. Sasha sat on an exam table, her sleeves rolled up. Dr. Aristhorne, a concierge physician who usually treated professional athletes, was photographing her wrists under a specialized light. Deep tissue bruising, Dr. Aristhorne murmured, dictating into a recorder. Lacerations consistent with industrial-grade polymer restraints. Possible ulnar nerve compression in the left wrist. We're looking at 6 weeks of physical therapy, and she won't be able to draw or paint for at least 3. Darius stood in the corner. He hadn't taken off his suit jacket. He was vibrating with a quiet, terrifying rage. To him, Sasha's hands weren't just hands. They were her gift. She was an artist. Brenda hadn't just hurt his daughter. She had damaged her future. The door opened. Harrison walked in. He wasn't holding a tablet this time. He was holding a thick physical file folder. Sir, Harrison said, we have the preliminary deep dive on Brenda Higgins. Tell me she's clean. Darius said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Tell me this was a one-time lapse in judgment. On the contrary, Harrison said, placing the file on the table. It appears Ms. Higgins has been running a very specific, very lucrative operation for the last 5 years. Sasha looked up from her injured wrists. Operation. Harrison opened the file. It was filled with flight manifests, seating charts, and bank transfers. We hacked the airline's legacy server legally, of course, since you now own it, Harrison clarified. We found a pattern. Every few months on long-haul flights, Ms. Higgins manually flags a first-class seat as inoperative, seat spring broken, or monitor malfunction, right before boarding. This removes the seat from the saleable inventory. So the seat stays empty? Darius asked. Officially, yes. Harrison nodded. But on those same flights we found a recurring anomaly. A passenger listed as standby or non-rev is moved into that broken seat after takeoff. These passengers never appear on the official upgrade list. Harrison pulled out a photo. It was a grainy security cam shot from a hotel lobby. It showed Brenda accepting a thick envelope from a man in a suit. She's been selling the seats, Harrison said. Under the table, she finds wealthy business travelers who don't want to pay the full $8,000 fare. She tells them to buy a coach ticket, then she bumps them up to first class for $2,000 cash. She pockets the money, claims the seat was broken, and the airline is none the wiser. And me? Sasha asked quietly. You were in the way. Harrison said gently. On Flight 882, she had a client lined up, a man named Mr. Henderson in Seat 4B. He had paid her. She needed Seat 1A empty. But because you booked last minute using your father's corporate black card, the system overrode her broken seat block. When you showed up, she panicked. She couldn't tell Mr. Henderson she couldn't deliver, so she tried to bully you into moving to the jump seat so she could give him your spot. Darius picked up the file. His hands were steady. So, Darius said, she didn't just assault a minor. She committed wire fraud, corporate theft, and violated FAA regulations regarding passenger manifests. Correct, Harrison said. And the man she was selling the seat to, he's a VP at a rival logistics firm. We have him on the flight voice recorder asking her, "Is the girl gone yet? I need to sleep." Darius closed the file. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Get the federal prosecutors on the line," Darius said. "I don't just want her fired. I want her to serve time. And Harrison, sir, make sure the IRS gets a copy of this file. If she's taking cash bribes, I doubt she's declaring them on her taxes." 3 days later, the deposition took place in a glass-walled conference room in downtown Los Angeles. It wasn't a fair fight. It was a slaughter. On one side of the table sat Darius Sterling Sasha Silent and taking notes, and Gavin Spector, a legendary litigator known in LA as the shark who eats other sharks. On the other side sat Brenda. She looked small. She was wearing a conservative cardigan, trying to look like a grandmother. Next to her was a union representative named Mike, who looked like he would rather be anywhere else on Earth. "Ms. Higgins," Gavin Spector began, his voice deceptively pleasant. "Let's review the events of Flight 882. You claim you restrained my client, Ms. Sterling, because she was a threat to the aircraft. Is that correct?" "Yes," Brenda said, her voice shaking. She was resisting crew instructions." "We have the affidavit from the passenger in 1B, Gavin said, sliding a paper across the table. He states, and I quote, "The girl was sketching in a notebook. The flight attendant snatched her phone and started screaming." "Does that sound like a threat to the aircraft?" He didn't see everything," Brenda stammered. "We also have the audio," Gavin said. He pressed a button on his laptop. The room filled with the sound of the flight. The quality was crisp, the cockpit voice recorder audio that Harrison had subpoenaed. Voice of Brenda. "I don't care what the scanner said. She's probably a non-rev. I don't like glitches." Voice of Sasha. "I'm in Group 1. Voice of Brenda. "Grab her. Restrain her." Gavin stopped the tape. "I don't like glitches. Is that a standard FAA term for a passenger, Higgins?" Brenda stayed silent. Mike, the union rep, leaned over and whispered, "We should stop. You need to plead the fifth." "We're not done." Darius spoke up. It was the first time he had spoken. Darius slid a spreadsheet across the table. "We know about the cash upgrades, Brenda. We know about Mr. Henderson. We know you've stolen approximately $140,000 from the airline over the last 4 years. Brenda's face went grey. She looked at her union rep. Mike stood up. He closed his briefcase. "The union defends members against unjust termination," Mike said coldly. "We do not defend members against federal wire fraud and racketeering. You're on your own, Brenda." Mike walked out of the room. Brenda was left alone with the wolves. "Here is the offer," Gavin said, sliding a final document forward. "We have filed a civil suit for assault, battery, false imprisonment, and emotional distress. We are asking for $5 million in damages. We know you don't have $5 million, so we will garnish your wages for the rest of your life. We will take your house. We will take your car. Or, Brenda whispered, tears streaming down her face. Or, Darius said, you plead guilty to the federal charges the FBI is bringing against you this afternoon. You serve your time. You issue a public apology to my daughter. And you never, ever work in the travel industry again. The FBI, Brenda choked out. The door to the conference room opened. 2 agents in windbreakers walked in. They were real agents, FBI Los Angeles field office. Brenda Higgins, one of them said, we have a warrant for your arrest regarding violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 1343, wire fraud, and Section 113 assault within maritime and territorial jurisdiction. Brenda looked at Sasha. Sasha, please, Brenda begged. I have kids. They're in college. Please. Sasha looked at the woman who had cuffed her to a chair and humiliated her in front of strangers. She thought about the weeks of physical therapy ahead of her. She thought about the racism masked as protocol. You should have thought about your kids, Sasha said evenly, before you put cuffs on someone else's kid. Brenda stood up. The agents turned her around. Click, click. The sound of handcuffs closing was the loudest sound in the room. As they marched her out, Gavin Spector turned to Darius. That went well. Darius didn't smile. He just reached out and squeezed Sasha's shoulder. Let's go home. The story hit the news that evening. Video of teen handcuffed in first class goes viral. Airline CEO fired. Purser arrested. The internet was ablaze. Stratum Global's stock actually went up because the public loved the Justice Dad narrative. But for Sasha, the victory wasn't in the news cycle. It was in the quiet moment in the car ride home when she realized she wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a survivor. The calendar on the wall of the physical therapy clinic had flipped 6 times since the incident on Flight 882. For the first 2 months, Sasha hadn't been able to hold a charcoal pencil for more than 10 minutes without her left hand cramping. The ulnar nerve damage from the zip ties had been severe, a constant throbbing reminder of the humiliation she had endured at 35,000 feet. But Sasha Sterling was her father's daughter. She didn't sulk. She worked. Every squeeze of the therapy ball, every painful extension of her wrist, she visualized it not as rehabilitation, but as preparation. She wasn't just healing, she was building. Darius had kept his word. The acquisition of the airline wasn't just a hostile takeover, it was an exorcism. He had gutted the board of directors, fired the entire executive leadership team, and offered the frontline staff, the good ones, the ones who had been too afraid of bullies like Brenda to speak up a choice stay and build something better, or leave with a generous severance. Most stayed. They wanted to see what the sterling touch looked like. It looked like Sasha. Darius had appointed his daughter as the creative director for the rebrand. It was a bold move, one that Wall Street analysts scoffed at until they saw the designs. Sasha had poured her trauma into her art. She stripped away the aggressive reds and stale navies of the old carrier. In their place, she introduced a palette inspired by the very things that had calmed her during the ordeal. The deep, serene teal of the ocean and the warm, protective terracotta of the desert sunset. Now, 6 months later, it was launch day. The setting was once again Los Angeles International Airport, LAX Terminal 4. But the atmosphere couldn't have been more different from that rainy, miserable night. The California sun was blazing through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the polished terrazzo floors. Sasha stepped out of the black SUV at the curb. This time she wasn't wearing a faded hoodie or baggy sweatpants. She wore a bespoke cream-colored suit that fit her frame perfectly, the sleeves tailored just enough to reveal the faint silver scar on her left wrist, a battle scar she no longer felt the need to hide. Her hair was braided in an intricate crown, and she wore sunglasses that cost more than a Honda Civic. She didn't have to wait in line. She didn't have to show an app. Harrison was waiting for her at the curb, flanked by two new security detail members who looked less like guards and more like Secret Service agents. "Ms. Sterling," Harrison said, bowing his head slightly. "The press is assembled in the main atrium. Your father is already reviewing the talking points with the governor." "Thank you, Harrison," Sasha said, her voice steady and confident. "How are the numbers looking?" "Pre-bookings for the new first-class suites are sold out for the next 4 months," Harrison replied with a rare smile. "It seems the public appreciates an airline that guarantees dignity along with legroom." They walked through the automatic doors. The terminal stopped. Travelers paused mid-stride. TSA agents looked up. It wasn't just that she was beautiful. It was that she radiated power. She walked with the easy, unhurried gait of someone who owns the building. Technically, her father did, but the distinction felt irrelevant. As they moved toward the private elevators that would take them to the VIP lounge for the press conference, the path took them past the main food court. The smell hit Sasha first, the heavy, cloying scent of stale fryer grease and sugary sodas. It was the smell of the economy experience, the chaotic rush of the masses. "Harrison, wait," Sasha said, stopping abruptly. "Ms. Sterling, we are on a tight schedule." "Just a moment." Sasha turned toward the Burger Barn franchise in the corner of the food court. She didn't know why, but she felt a pull. Call it intuition. Call it the universe aligning the final tumblers of the lock. The lunchtime rush was in full swing. The line was 20 people deep. Customers were agitated, checking their watches, yelling orders over the noise of the fryers. And there behind the register, wearing a polyester uniform that was stained with mustard and grease, was a woman who looked vaguely familiar. It took Sasha a moment to reconcile the image. The woman was gaunt. Her hair, once aggressively styled and sprayed into a helmet, was now limp and grey, pulled back into a mandatory hairnet. Her skin was sallow, the result of too many double shifts and not enough sunlight. It was Brenda. But it wasn't the Brenda of Flight 882. That Brenda had been a tyrant, a queen of her tin can castle. This Brenda was broken. Sasha watched from behind her sunglasses. She saw a businessman in a cheap suit yell at Brenda. "I said no pickles. Can you not read?" "Are you stupid?" the man shouted, slamming his tray on the counter. Brenda flinched. The old Brenda would have snapped back, would have called security, would have sneered. This Brenda simply shrank into her shoulders. "I'm sorry, sir." Brenda mumbled, her voice raspy and defeated. "I'll fix it. Please, please don't tell the manager. I can't get another write-up." "Then do your job properly," the man barked. The irony was so thick it was almost suffocating. Brenda, who had once terrorized passengers for non-compliance, was now being terrorized by the very public she had disdained. She was trapped in a hell of customer service, stripped of her authority, her pension and her pride. The federal plea deal had kept her out of prison, but the restitution payments meant she would be working minimum wage jobs until she was 80, just to keep a roof over her head. She was banned from the flight tarmac. She was grounded in the most literal sense. Sasha took a step closer. The crowd parted around her, sensing the bubble of VIP status. Brenda looked up to grab a new stack of cups. Her eyes swept over the crowd and landed on Sasha. Time seemed to freeze. Brenda dropped the cup. It bounced on the linoleum floor. She recognized the girl. How could she not? Sasha's face had been on the news for weeks. The teen in handcuffs. The heiress who fought back. Brenda's mouth opened. A dozen emotions flickered across her face. Shock, shame, fear, and finally, a desperate, pathetic hope. She looked like she wanted to scream, to beg, to ask for mercy. She took a half step away from the register, her hands trembling. "Sasha," she mouthed, the word lost in the noise of the terminal. Sasha lowered her sunglasses slowly. She looked Brenda in the eye. She remembered the zip ties. She remembered the pain in her shoulders. She remembered the way Brenda had smiled when she threatened to call the police. Harrison stepped forward, sensing the tension. "Ms. Sterling, do you want me to have her removed? The airport authority can trespass her from the premises if she is bothering you." Sasha looked at the shivering, broken woman behind the counter. She saw the grease stains. She saw the terror of a woman who knew she was one mistake away from homelessness. To have her fired now would be easy. It would be crushing. It would be the final nail. But Sasha realized something profound in that moment. Brenda was already in prison. Her cell just happened to smell like French fries. "No, Harrison," Sasha said calmly, her voice carrying just enough for Brenda to hear. "She's not bothering me. She's just irrelevant." The word hit Brenda harder than a slap. Irrelevant. Sasha put her sunglasses back on. She didn't smirk. She didn't offer a dramatic goodbye. She simply turned her back. "Let's go, Harrison. We have an airline to launch." Sasha walked away, her heels clicking rhythmically on the floor. Behind her, she heard the manager of the burger barn yelling, "Brenda, stop staring at the customers and get back to the fryer. Order 52 is waiting." Sasha didn't look back. She stepped into the private elevator, and as the doors closed, shutting out the noise and the smell of the food court, she felt a weight lift off her chest that she hadn't realized she was carrying. The karma hadn't just hit back. It had obliterated the target. The elevator opened into the VIP lounge. The flashbulbs went off immediately. "Sasha over here. Ms. Sterling. Look this way." Darius. Sterling was waiting at the podium. He looked up, saw his daughter, and beamed. He stepped aside, relinquishing the microphone to her. Sasha approached the podium. She looked out at the sea of reporters, industry titans, and cameras. She rested her hands on the lectern, the silver scar on her wrist catching the light. 6 months ago. Sasha began, her voice ringing clear and strong through the PA system. "I was told I didn't belong in this airport. I was told that my presence was a glitch. I was judged not by my character or my ticket, but by a prejudice that has no place in the sky." The room went silent. "Today," she continued, gesturing to the massive banners unveiling the new Sterling Pacific logo behind her, a stylized phoenix rising in teal and terracotta. "We are launching an airline built on a different principle. We don't just fly passengers. We honor them. Because you never know who is sitting in seat 1A. You never know whose story you are interrupting. And you never know when the person you try to hold down will be the one who ends up owning the wings." The applause was thunderous. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. Darius clapped the loudest tears of pride, glistening in his eyes. Sasha smiled. She picked up a glass of champagne from a passing tray, served by a smiling, well-paid flight attendant who treated everyone with respect. She walked over to the window. Down below on the tarmac, a Sterling Pacific 787 was taxiing for takeoff. And somewhere deep in the bowels of the terminal, Brenda was scraping grease off a grill. The balance of the universe had been restored. And there you have it. The story of Sasha Sterling and the flight attendant who made the biggest and last mistake of her career. It's a brutal reminder that karma isn't always immediate, but when it arrives, it pays out with interest. Brenda thought she could strip Sasha of her dignity, but all she did was hand Sasha the keys to the kingdom. Sasha didn't just get revenge, she got to rewrite the rules. She proved that the best response to disrespect isn't violence. It's success so blinding that your enemies can't even look at you without squinting. If this story satisfied that itch for justice, please smash that like button. It helps the algorithm find more people who need to hear this. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification. I have another story coming up next week about a landlord who tried to evict a single mum, only to realize she was the judge presiding over his tax evasion case. You do not want to miss that one. Until then, remember, treat everyone like a CEO, because you never know who they might turn out to be. Thanks for watching.